In the aftermath of the inconclusive 2023 presidential election, in the midst of the interregnum that NINAS had declared, that's a period without legitimate government, and as we watch the progress at the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal, especially the matter of threat for anarchy and chaos from candidate Bola Tinubu, at least from the camp of candidate Bola Tinubu, we have to call our attention once again to the gathering clouds. The clouds are gathering over Nigeria. And some of the things that are emerging indicate that there's a desperation to shift goalposts and arrive at results other than what should have been if the truth were to be upheld, if the process were to be kept a little more straight and less crooked. We now hear that matters may be heading more towards rerun for an election that produced an outcome. Let us recollect, let us remind ourselves that NINAS, for good reasons, had in 2020, December 16, rolled out its constitutional force majeure, counseling Nigeria against proceeding to an election that was already doomed on account of the constitution that had been defeated, the constitution that had been delegitimized. The constitution of Nigeria is dead, 1999. And that the basis of NINA's prescriptions in the 5-point proposition of the constitutional force majeure has now become more manifest. That is, people can now see that election will not resolve the issues of Nigeria, those issues that will consume Nigeria if we don't find a more viable answer early enough, quick enough, soon enough. And so this talk of rerun that is being introduced into the atmosphere, the candidates, a quick caveat before I proceed, a quick caveat. NINA's quarrel is not with those in government house. At the time we say, let us stop the journey to election and go to transition to rework the damaged constitutional basis of Nigeria in 2020, Muhammad Buhari was president. And so if you had listened in the 90-day notice of constitutional grievances and activation of force majeure, if Buhari had listened and the government of the time, which he led, he probably would have been the one announcing to the country, like Frederick de Klerk did in 1990 for South African apartheid. He would have been the one announcing to the country that we have a problem that we now need to solve, that the constitution of Nigeria can no longer, as currently framed, can no longer carry the union. And therefore, we proceed to that discussion to renegotiate, reconfigure, and reconstruct. The government in that period of that renegotiation will be a nominal government. We're still explaining what the contents of our prescription. We are not anarchists, because some will say, oh, will anarchy, that's as if we're prescribing that everybody should pack their bag and cause no, it's not anarchy. We're saying there will be a nominal governance in place, like the government of Frederick de Klerk between 1990 and 1994. From the point he made that announcement that the apartheid constitution had become reason South Africa will not progress any further, can only degenerate, like the 1999 constitution. And so our prescription is that there will be a nominal government, that is the government that just ensures that salaries are paid to public servants and civil servants, that utilities work, electricity, water, but no policy no such powers to go borrowing $800 million here, 500 billion naira there in the name of government. No, just nominal governance, so that the meeting of the owners of the sovereignties consolidated into the Nigerian Union would then, like CODESA in South Africa, go into that discussion, that renegotiation of union. That process we have been evading since 1967. This is the time to do it. The alternative, the default is dissolution of union, because we cannot continue to build on a constitution of fraud, on a constitution of death that has turned 200 million people into, they turned their lives unlivable. And so this broadcast is to tell all stakeholders that for the same reasons we prescribed a suspension of further national elections under the 1999 Constitution, NINAS is going to be adamantly opposed to any rerun of the same election, because it is the same Constitution that will be the basis of the Union, is the same Constitution that will be the basis of the democracy, is the same Constitution by which the winner of that rerun election will have to govern. How do we reconcile the situation as it is, since the previous government is gone and the new one is not yet in place, because the election of February 25, 2023 is still is still in process, more or less. On the basis of our willingness to tolerate for a limited purpose that constitution that is a fraud, the 1999 constitution, on the basis of the limited toleration we're extending to that constitution for the sake of peace, for the sake of avoiding anarchy, we will relate with whoever is legitimately in government house, legitimate in quote, anybody who will be president, anybody who will be government. On the day we begin this discussion, like we said a million times over before now, NINA's quarrel is not with those in government house. But what we reject, what we will not accept, is where by brigandage somebody will jump into government house and say, I'm non-government. No, that's why we declared on the 12th of June that interregnum declaration by which we told the global community, by which we entered a global caveat against the product of the February 25 election, in which the person that was declared winner was deficient in a mandatory constitutional requirement of 25% of valid votes cast at the Federal Capital Territory. And so it is within the context of that very clear situation that we're saying, whatever the tribunal is going to do, there must be something that can be done with the February 25th election. If the figures are reviewed according to the contents of the beavers, there will be an adjustment in which we will see very clearly who has the highest number. We then look at the question of 25% in 24 states, just trying to settle a quarrel amongst a band of thieves who, so that their quarrel does not become anarchy upon all of us. It is in that limited sense that we're saying, look, for the one that can be, since our quarrel is not with the people in government house, for the one that can become nominal government in the period of the transition, in the period of the union negotiation and union reconfiguration, let us at least be sure that we don't steer the populace into the kind of actions that are building up all over the place, because people are not going to accept the brigandage of defying that constitution that's already been rejected, already being repudiated. If they defy it, they're inviting everybody, starting with NINAS, starting with the populace, into defying whatever is left of that constitution. Let those who will want to interpret it in their own way listen early enough. If that 25% is waived for candidate Bola Tinubu, that constitution goes down that same day. As it's going down, the court that waived it will go down with it. Let nobody make any mistakes. The limited toleration of that constitution for the sake of peace, for the sake of avoiding anarchy, will be lifted, will be suspended, will be dispensed with if that 25% is waived for any candidate. And so we then come down to advising the wrongdoers in their quarrel, because their quarrel may affect this innocent 200 million population. And so we say, let the figures be reconciled. It will become clear who has the highest number of figures. Let the question of 25% in 24 states be reconciled. Then let the question of 25% at the Federal Capital Territory be reconciled. If that happens without further shifting of goalposts, perhaps there might be an outcome that can become basis of saying there's a government in place. But if anybody is thinking that it will be that all this is to be pushed aside in the pretense that the election didn't quite produce an outcome, then our straight advice to candidate Peter Obi, who won the election, we have never, even before anybody else began to speak, we told everybody what we knew, including the global stakeholders, the outside, the international stakeholders in the affairs of Nigeria. We did tell them that from what we saw, that candidate Peter Obi won the election. He had clearly higher number of votes than the ones they put in front of him. He has the spread. He has the 25%. That does not change anything from our rejection of that constitution as basis of union and democracy. We said we will not allow anybody, we will not accept the governance of Nigeria on the basis of that 1999 constitution beyond the round of the electoral cycle, beyond the governance season and cycle that ended with the 2023 election. And so we are in a period of interregnum right now. Buhari and his bandwagon gone. Tinubu and his bandwagon not yet in. He has power. Of course, he can appoint police and army and beat up Mefele and withdraw subsidy and cause more hardship everywhere. That's on the side of power. But the basis of power is authority. The power that Tinubu is exercising today is without authority, because authority is what the election does, to invest amongst the parties that are competing for who will drive the vehicle for the moment. The election is the mechanism by which authority is invested, and it is when that authority is invested that the powers of that office can then be legitimately exercised. If that authority has not been invested, what Tinubu has in his hand right now is power. That power enables him fire police chief, hire army chief, throw central bank to whichever direction, or subsidy. He can be doing all of that, but he does not have the authority which can only which exclusively comes from the people by a process we call election. And if that is the case, yes, he is exercising power. The question of dealing with his government as the legitimate government of the day to resolve the issues of Nigeria, of course, we will only be deceiving ourselves if we think that we recall that when we issued the constitutional force majeure proclamation in December of 2020, Buhari was president, and so we extended a 90-day period of notice in which that federal government, as obnoxious as that constitution was, as obnoxious as the government of the time that was presiding over the killing of people was, we still, made a provision for somebody so that there's no gap, there's no vacuum. Somebody must be in government house. Let that person, whoever he is, come forward to take the place of government in the discussion amongst the owners of the sovereignty that is consolidated as Nigeria. And so our direct message to candidate Peter Obi is to say, if anybody suggests that a rerun will be the outcome, will be the next step from what has happened to Nigeria, Peter Obi should not tempt God by going to a rerun for an election he already won, because it will then mean dragging us into election the same way he helped them drag us to election of February 2023. We said, let us not go to this election, because if we go, the country will go up in smoke. If you doubt, go to YouTube and check out the title. We either abort the 2023 election or we watch Nigeria go up in smoke. Go to YouTube. We either abort the 2023 election or we watch Nigeria go up in smoke. And so that's where we are now. It was because we went to that election that everything that has happened across the last 6 months are happening. The killings that has been escalated, the so-called fuel subsidy that has now ruined whatever was left of the economy, and everything you see, the complete collapse of confidence around all institutions. We see the stories emanating from the judicial circle. We see what the US is doing in rejection of our crooked ways. And so Peter Obi won the election. Therefore, NINAS is saying to Peter Obi, stay with that mandate, because if you abandon it in the journey to rerun, all of you running under the basis of under that constitution, whatever we find to do to prevent going to an election mandated by that constitution, in which the winner will swear to defend and uphold and govern by that constitution, we are back to where we were before the 2023 February presidential election. We're back there now. But what is NINAS proposing? We must, as of priority, we must now proceed to the transitioning that we must undertake, during which we will solve the underlying problems that are now, creeping up everywhere. We must go to that transition now, and we insist that whatever happened with that election of February 25 of 2023 should be enough to produce the what is it called, the nominal governance that will manage the affairs of Nigeria in the period of that union renegotiation, in the period of that transition. That will be our prescription. If anybody will then choose to defy, because we know there are basically 3 options confronting the country now. Some are going to insist mandate. The one who was declared on from February election will say, oh, on my mandate I will stand. The one who truly won the election will say, oh, I must recover my mandate. That is the option of mandate, recovery or retention. In the second slot, rerun, in which everybody goes to try to get mandate. Again, we are back to mandate. Again, we are back to constitution that we are rejecting. So both the mandate recovery stroke retention and the mandate that will come from rerun As far as NINAS is concerned, they are still in the same basket of trying to carry on the operation of Nigeria on the basis of the 1999 constitution that's a fraud. But on the other side, there is also the option of now accepting that we can no longer continue the Nigeria defined by the fraud of 1999 and therefore go into transition. Let those who want to save the catastrophes, save Nigeria from the catastrophes that are racing towards Nigeria right now, let all of them stand up and join NINAS in saying we must suspend this stupid talk about election and mandate under the constitution that guarantees the killing of citizens, the impoverishment of citizens or people. Let's not talk about citizens. The constitution that has made Nigeria the poverty capital of the world, the example of corruption globally, the example of impunity globally, the constitution that guarantees the inequalities we see that have become reason young people are trooping all over the world, fleeing from their country, Nigeria. And so we must now put aside all the talk about mandate and rerun and go to transition. We have a second chance now. We remember that for 3 years we were shouting from the rooftops, let us not go to this election. Let us not go to this election. Many blocked their ears. Now they're crying and weeping. Some are planning to go to protest, all kinds of things. We have a second chance now that that election went inconclusive to come back to our senses. The church leaders, the labor movement, the young people, including the obedient movement people, have you stopped to question yourself about the changes you seek? Go to see the 10-point interrogatories. Just type the word interrogatories, whether on YouTube or on Facebook or any other platforms. NINAS interrogatories. You will see the things we said will not change no matter who becomes president. Is there any of the candidates that did not talk about removal of subsidy? If Peter Obi becomes president, he will say he wants to remove subsidy. But NINAS is saying it's not removal of subsidy that should be the discussion. It is how did we come about the situation in which we now have to subsidize because we're importing petroleum products. Why are we importing? Because we are not refining locally. Why are we not refining locally? Is it too much of a science or technology issue? No, it's because the Constitution of Nigeria 1999 has refineries on the exclusive list. Let the labor movement listen now. Let the civil society organizations listen now. Let all of those who will be rallied, summoned to come and hold protests for increments that are coming with a so-called removal of subsidy. NINAS is saying the solution to the problem is not whether subsidy is added or palliative is removed. It is to remove the impediment, to extinguish the source of the problem, which is the refineries that remain on the exclusive list is guaranteed that petroleum products will never be available. We have 3 million barrels of crude oil we sell every day, and we cannot refine the 10%, the 300,000 barrels or so that will service the population and even have some left to export and create all the jobs that can be created and add all the values that will be added in terms of byproducts from petroleum products. We lock all these things down into barrel of crude which we lazily sell, and then all of the process, not enough to finance the 812 governments we have to finance. What lunacy is this? What lunacy is this? Where is the education of all of those who claim PhD all over this place, running their mouth all over the TV stations, the lawyers in the land, the men of God in the land? Where are you in this discussion? People are dying. Fire is coming. Fire that will consume many is racing towards Nigeria. We say whatever it will take to stop the journey to rerun, for the same reasons we offered for saying let us not go in February, let us not go to another election under this constitution. For those same reasons which have now become amplified by the events of the last 6 months, we are saying rerun is not an option. Transition is the only thing that we should be discussing. If we are not discussing that transition to discuss, then we must now disperse as a union, because we cannot be held together by the fraud of 1999 any further. Let those who wish to listen, not only listen, but join in the task of convincing others. If we can't find common ground, we say it loud and clear. The unilateral actions we see building up all over the place will overtake everybody. Nobody needs to mobilize those who are being killed into trying to save themselves. They're going to try to save themselves. Nobody will need to mobilize those whose environment are being destroyed in the Niger Delta by oil operations, who have been inflicted with such depth of poverty that's unimaginable. Nobody will need to mobilize them to begin to do whatever they can do in the face of the collapse of the constitution that holds the union together. They are going to go unilateral. That's what they're going to get. We are the only peacemakers in the middle. Those who wish to interrogate the wider reasoning behind our current position should get on YouTube and review the video titles "Transitioning as Alternative to Chaos in the Looming Constitutional Crisis." Transitioning as Alternative to Chaos in Looming Constitutional Crisis. There's also the other broadcast titled "Mangled 2023 Presidential Election, Practical Steps to Initiating Transitioning." Mangled 2023 Presidential Election, Practical Steps to Initiating Transitioning. The politicians of all the political parties, there's no difference between PDP and APC and the Labour Party in the circumstance. They all subscribe to that constitution of evil and their candidates. And so let us get it very clear in our heads that the journey to Rerun is a journey to renew the life of that monster that is tormenting everybody. And the reasons we offered for not wanting the renewal of the life of that monster by way of election remain valid and will be applied to any suggestion of a rerun of election. We come back to what has been done already, sort it out properly, and see whether we can find something that can become the nominal governance for the period. It's a lot more important to get into that transitioning than trying to find who the president for another 4 years will be on the basis of this constitution. There will be difficulties. There will be difficulties if we try to go that route. A word enough for the wise. Thank you.